Hi everyone, welcome back to the Bible Project podcast. And you're dropping in at episode 81 of our journey together through the book of Genesis. But if you just arrived with us today, why not go back right to the very beginning of season 1, where we launched off by giving an entire overview of the whole Bible, 66 short 6-minute podcast, giving an introduction and overview of each and every one of the books of our Bible. And then a while ago, 81 days ago, we launched off on season 2, which is the beginning of this amazing journey through the whole Bible, beginning in Genesis, which could take around about 10 years, Lord willing. Now, the full transcript of any talk I give is always available in the audio version of this podcast, wherever you can access it from. You just go into the episode notes and you'll find it there, along with links to all the ministries and the various podcasts that I'm doing. Now, today and tomorrow in particular, there are some very long list of names in the scriptures we're going to be considering. So rather than read through them all, just for the next 2 podcasts, slightly differently, I'll refer you back to the episode notes or your own Bibles where you'll find those lists of names and can follow them along. But the verses we're looking at today as we launch into Genesis are Genesis 10, beginning at verse 13. And the reason why this is starting there is this is an important point because the way the names are being listed has changed. Bible experts will tell you that they're no longer describing the individual line of Ham. We are no longer at this point talking about a person. We're talking about a tribe or a family or who those tribes will go on to become. In other words, a nation. It will also tell us more about the line of Canaan and the fact that they produced the Canaanites who became the ultimate enemy of Israel. Israel will fight with the Canaanites after they enter the promised land. Now, let me draw attention to the fact that this is where Bible experts agree that also described within this list of names in verses 13 to 20 are the origins of the Oriental nations and even where the Native American indigenous people came from. Let me explain. The Hittites are mentioned in this section, which were an empire that lasted over 800 years and then very suddenly fell. Now, there are historic indications that the survivors of that Hittite nation fled to China, and there are a number of similarities between the prehistoric Hittites of the Bible and the Mongol nations and other civilizations around that region that have been discovered and identified in other scientific disciplines. But other factors that point to that are included in the cultural aspect of those society, things like shoes where the toes were turned upward, the custom of men wearing their hair in pigtails, as well as the early work of smelting and casting of iron, and the domestication of horses. They were all first seen among the Hittites and then carried on in what are called the Sino area of the world. Now, if you've probably heard the expression Sino-European relations or Sino-American relationships, and it is from this chapter that we get that expression. There's a theory that some of these Oriental people later migrated from China and crossed the Bering Strait, which has been demonstrated to have been almost permanently frozen at the time of these writings, and that is where the Native American and the Eskimo tribes in North America and Canada came from. All right, we've got one more son to look at in this section, and this is the Semites, and this is picking it up in verse 20. And again, there's a long list of names. The sons of Shem are given, and the sons of Abraham, and then the sons of Eber. And then within those 3 sections, there's a further long list of names. So we're now in the 3rd section of the scripture in chapter 10, and it's focusing on the children born to Shem, and very significantly, the line of Eber. The text mentions all the family lines, but then clearly highlights and emphasizes one son. So whoever this Eber guy is, he must be important. Before all the sons of Shem are even mentioned, Eber is singled out for emphasis. So the question is, who is Eber and why is he important? There are only two individuals highlighted in this chapter. The first, if you remember, was Nimrod last time, and he was seen to be in rebellion against God. And the second now is this character Eber. But if I were to tell you that the word Eber is where we today get the word Hebrew from, then that might drop a hint for you of just how important this is. Remember, the whole point of this chapter, as I underlined, is underlined in the last verse of it, which says this: these are the families of the sons of Noah, according to their generations, in their nations, and from those nations, and how they were divided on the earth after the flood. You see, the sum of all this is simple. After the flood, the three sons of Noah are seen to produce families, and they're documented in this chapter, and they eventually produce over 70 nations. Some say 72, in fact, to be exact. Nations dwelling in different lands and speaking different languages. And interestingly, there's a passage in Luke talks about sending 72 evangelists out, which many tie into this so that the whole nations of the earth would be covered. But anyway, we've now reached the critical part in the chapter where it's possible to discern and take an overview of it and ask what's its all mean and what's its purpose. Well, we're going to find out in the very next episode. So I look forward to getting back to you again soon. And just in closing, I'd like to remind you that there are links where you can follow along with the various podcasts and access the other resources. And there's also a place there where you can become a supporter, a patron of my ministry for as little as £1 a month, and ensure that this work is continued and spread as widely as possible across as many platforms as possible. And there's also a link there where if you're interested in the background music I create, or you can listen to it, or there's even a link to my Bandcamp page where you can buy some of my music and help support my ministry this way. And also links to places where you can buy some of my books. So anyway, we'll be back again tomorrow, and we'll finish off this section of Genesis chapter 10, looking at the Table of Nations. Bye for now.